To make your mini cakes, of course you're going to need some cake. So I found that a denser cake, like a dense sponge or a pound cake, worked well here. And I've got two rectangle 1-inch high sponges. You can either make them or you can buy them. I've got some chocolate truffles and an offset spatula, a knife and a little bit of corn flour in a corn flour shaker. I've got some writing icing or decorating icing, cookie icing, anything there just to decorate our truffles. And I've also got some of our perfectly pipeable buttercream frosting that I've just tinted pink. I've got a myriad of sprinkles, so I've got a bit of a self-made Valentine's mix, which is really just some little red and white love hearts and some pink and red mini M&Ms. I've also got some chocolate sprinkles and some multicolored sprinkles, as well as some jumbo hearts, but you can really interchange these and use whatever sprinkles you have. I've got a couple of cookie cutters, so a circle and a heart, and I'll leave dimensions of those down below. I've also got a fondant roller and a little bit of red fondant. I'm going to show you how to make the little chocolate box mini cakes. So for this, you're going to need your sponge cake and just cut out a nice piece. You can see how firm that sponge is using your love heart cutter. Unwrap all of your little candies, truffles or chocolates, whatever you want to put in the box, and try and pick a difference between milk and dark. And then I just sort of position them inside the cutter so that I know exactly where I'm going to stick them on the cake and I'm not messing around with my frosting. This one here had a bit of an awkward space, so I just cut one of them in half so they all fit really nicely within that little love heart. Taking a bit of that decorating icing now, and these come with these cute little disposable piping tips. Otherwise you could also use a Ziploc bag, or you can use just the general tip or the end of whatever the icing container you're using is. On goes my little star tip, and I'm just going to make like a little swirl or even a little dot on top of one of my truffles, coming up to a bit of a point. And then I'm going to stick one of my jumbo love heart sprinkles. Like I said, any sprinkles you like here, but just use your writing icing to kind of decorate up your truffles a little bit so they're not all just brown. You kind of want to add that little bit of color. For a couple of them, I'm actually going to sort of paint them in the decorating icing, and then I'm going to roll them in some of those sprinkles just on the top. So that gives us like a really nice, brightly colored, kind of a homemade looking truffle without having to go to all the trouble of making handmade truffles. With your truffles all decorated, it's time to make our little heart box lids. So these are made from fondant and they need about 48 hours to firm up. You can speed that up by adding a little bit of Tylose, but they're quite thick, so they do need to be really firm before you rest them up against the side of your boxes. Place down a generous sprinkling of corn flour, and then you want to take your red fondant and you want to roll it out, but make sure that it's not too thin here because you do want it to actually look like the lid from a box of chocolates. Take your love heart cutter and cut yourself out a lid and then pop it onto a piece of baking paper overnight at least, but preferably for a couple of days to dry. With the rest of your fondant, you want to roll this out a bit thinner, so about the thickness of, say, 3 credit cards stacked on top of each other, and I'm rolling mine out in a nice, long rectangle shape. Once you've got it rolled out, you want to trim down both of the sides just using a knife, and these don't have to be perfect, but you do want them to be as straight as possible because they're going to form the outer edges of your box. Once that fondant's rolled out, you want to work relatively quickly here, so you want to make sure that it's about half a centimetre or so taller than the piece of cake that you've got. Roughly measure it out and then cut down the other piece so you've got like a long strip. The fondant's going to start to dry out here, so you need to move relatively quickly as you frost up your little love heart, but you don't want to frost that love heart any earlier than this or the buttercream's going to start to crust and then your fondant's going to have nothing to stick to. So using your offset spatula, just put a nice coating of that frosting on your little love heart cake, and then you want to take your long rectangle piece and just wrap it around the outside. It should stick to that buttercream frosting. You can use a knife here just to sort of push it in at the point at the top, and as you wrap it around to the point at the bottom, you should have a bit of overhang, so make sure these are longer than you think you're going to need. Snip them off with a pair of scissors, which should give you a really nice, neat finish at the bottom. And then you should already know where your little truffles are going to go, so you can just position them in the same spots on top of your cake that you came up with in your little cookie cutter template. Smooth off the edges, and then to transfer them onto your serving platter, just slide an offset spatula or a very thin knife directly underneath, lifting them up and placing them onto your serving platter. Once they're on the serving platter, you can take a little bit of cookie icing or royal icing, something that's going to harden, and then just rest the box lid up on sort of a jaunty angle on this side of your little love heart box cakes. I hope you guys love these little mini cakes. I think they're utterly gorgeous. If you think this is a cool idea, I'd love it if you'd share the video, give it a thumbs up, or let me know down below. As always, guys, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.